everybody, welcome to Arts Integration Case Studies featuring Terry Petrin and Alexandra Young.
The first study we chose was musical training shapes structural brain development. And we chose this study because it focused on students that received music instruction privately on the keyboard instead of receiving their regular music class instruction. Instead of going to their regular music class, they went to private lessons. So they were given private keyboard lessons for 30 minutes a week for 15 months, while the control group just participated in their normal music classes 40 minutes a week. The students attending the weekly private keyboard lessons were involved in a process-oriented method towards creative expression. The students that did receive the keyboard instruction were able to apply the musical skills that they were learning in their lessons. They showed greater brain and behavioral changes along with improved motor and auditory skills as opposed to the control group. They completed questionnaires, teacher observations noted this, and they actually also underwent MRIs that showed that there was different brain growth. The study does not address, however, whether or not the level of student engagement improved, but it did find that the students' auditory and motor skills improved with the keyboard instruction. Some questions that were raised with this study would be if the same results would be seen with older students, or if they change the instrument from a keyboard, if they would end up with the same results. As far as my classroom implementation, I could allow students to use instruments and music as a product they could create instead of a written test or other. I could also allow students to choose to develop their skills independently if they wanted to focus on a specific instrument or learning a specific song. They could choose to do that as part of their innovation time that they're given throughout the spring. So their focus of study could be music driven.
And one of the ways that I felt that I could bring this into my classroom is that when we're studying Spanish music, that we could do some ritmo with it. We can incorporate some drums or maracas or any other instruments that the students would want to learn how to incorporate into our musical studies, and just kind of give them some freedom of expression. And another way that I thought they could incorporate music into our classroom is that they can choose musical instruments to create a song for a summative assessment to show their understanding of the vocabulary that we have learned for that unit. The second study that we focused on was a study called The Role of Drama on Cultural Sensitivity, Motivation, and Literacy in a Second Language Context. And this study was about 2 middle school classes, and it was conducted in a French immersion setting. And they delivered a lesson on the deportation of Acadians from Eastern Canada. In one classroom, the material was presented traditionally how you would normally just a lecture, question and answer, student discussion. But the other class received it with using a drama instruction. And so they found that the students receiving drama had a deeper understanding and a greater connection to the material. And this is in direct opposition to the library group, or that's what they called the control group. And one of the interesting things I found with this study is that if they were presented in a non-traditional way, they were able to make a connection to the material, but the ones that were with traditional, they were just more worried about if they would be able to do well on the test and how they were going to be assessed on the material. And they weren't really making personal connections to it. So this one really showed greater student engagement with the drama-based method of presenting. So students in the drama-based group reported more motivation to learn French, and they also enjoyed the unit more than the group that received the traditional instruction. Some questions that the study raised was, would this work with a different age of group? Would older students be able to make the connections that the middle school age students did? And could this be replicated in other foreign language classrooms, or does it just apply to this French immersion setting?
In my classroom, students regularly perform skits. Sometimes they do ones that are already written, for example, in Scholastic Storyworks. But they could also write and perform skits with it across the subjects. And right now they do some of that, but there could definitely be room for more. For example, they do perform skits that model the food chain, they do parts of speech, they partake in a debate in social studies where they, when they're learning about the American Revolution, determining if the colonies should gain their independence. But based on this study, the one area that I haven't had students touch on would be more of the feelings and emotions or views of a certain group of people, or a way to express more emotion than just fact-based.
And I also incorporate drama into my classroom. One example is during my Restaurante unit, I introduced that vocabulary with a skit. It's called Sopa de Tomate. And it is initially presented as a one-woman play where I act out all the different parts, different roles, and so very dramatic and very movement-based. And then for the second time through, I read the script, and then the students are required to act out the same script in using a dramatic technique called moving mannequins, where two of the students play the mannequins and the other two have to move them according to the script and the vocabulary being presented. In my classroom, students also frequently create their own dialogues and skits to show their understanding of the materials. And other dramatic teaching methods that I use are total physical response, where the teacher gives a command and the students have to act it out. And then teaching TPRS, which is teaching proficiency through reading and storytelling. And that's where a story is given and the students need to act it out. And then you focus on certain vocabulary and you circle in and by asking questions throughout that as well. In conclusion, I would say that both of these studies had practical applications to my classroom. I could see taking the techniques and furthering them with my students to get those critical thinking skills, to accelerate the critical thinking skills, and also to promote student engagement and ownership of the material.
And like Terry said, I can absolutely see using some of those techniques that they used in both of the studies to increase that critical thinking. I would add that the study that had the students receiving the individualized keyboard instruction has fewer strategies and engagement that would be possible, I think, within both of our classrooms just because of the nature of that study. I think that's it. Thanks for listening.